Okay, hello everybody. Can you hear me? Right. I could summarize the issues today and start off with that. There have been so many important things and great details today that, I'm totally convinced that this isn't the end of this project, and it's really only beginning. We've heard a lot about sustainability. Um, to me, I'm thinking about the importance of uh, the circle groups, sustainability, all the tools, many other things. So I'm wondering what questions you might have of the speakers, or other things you want to bring up. So for those of you who are still around, let's go. Anybody? Anybody want to share one of their most memorable experiences throughout the study circles? Another thing I was thinking about was most important things you learned from the youth. I got a number of chats from you that the youth presentation today was outstanding, and wondering if anybody wants to share any thoughts about the study circles and or working with them. There's a question that's coming up. So Sean, how would it work to use the website for other community events?
The website has event and date-driven content types, so you can definitely add events and categorize events and build up that portion of the site to post any information about community events. In theory, you could even create separate like an event posting form, so members of the community could post events to be approved and then get added to the site automatically. There's a lot of different things that we could do in that regard.
Okay.
Janice, I have a question. One of the things I heard during the summit that was helpful to Shelley when she was collecting data, and I know has been helpful to Sue throughout planning the entire project, were the graduate students who were able to lend both their expertise, but also help themselves in terms of their own progress toward graduation. So what I'm wondering is, I know those folks exist at K-State, and I'm wondering what kind of student support you might have at Fort Hays, Colby, other places that might be more physically available to you. Does anybody know?
So, hi Betsy, Brett here. I'll take a first stab at it, but April and Tim Davis may want to add something. We, through the Donkey Institute, tend to fund at least 2 to 3 student researchers on a regular basis who are undergraduates. At the moment, we happen to have a graduate student as well, and we don't always have that. The criminal justice program does have a master's degree here at Fort Hays. They may have some access to graduate students. And Tim may be seeing some ways to use research assistants at the undergrad or the grad level in the future. He and I have not spoken about that anytime recently. But I would say that, so long as there's a need, most of us try to find a way, and even some of our undergraduates we find to be, exhibiting graduate level type work. And of course, those are the ones we tend to kind of target, go after, and ask to our staff on a regular basis anyway. So yeah, we try to make it work if we see the need.
I'll say one thing for K-State that can become a limitation is that we have to fund the graduate students. So I think there are times for smaller projects you can definitely make a connection, and I think that's very useful. We do mainly fund graduate teaching assistants, and then graduate research assistants are generally funded through a grant. And I think one of the things that becomes problematic is the cost of grants for smaller organization is almost prohibitive in a lot of areas, even though at times we try to work with things like indirect cost or having faculty reduce the amount if they were on a project as well. You know, I think one thing that could be interesting is if maybe areas of organizations that wanted a researcher, if we could just pool funds together and then sponsor a continued sort of graduate community outreach graduate research assistant and became an appointment year to year, and then they could fulfill needs for multiple organizations. I think that could be something we could entertain. So every organization could put a little bit into a pot, and then this could be a continued thing that brings, and it could be really attractive to the more research-minded graduate students, although all of them have research in mind, but some are doing it more because they want to be teachers as well, academic teachers. But somebody who was like, wait a minute, I'm going to have data to keep working on several different research projects, that might be a way to pursue, and maybe that's a broader discussion. And then I think even across universities, maybe if it's grad student, maybe it's a shared idea of some funding, and depending on where the student lands at which university, that might be useful. So I think creative ways of, I hate to use the word cobble, but that's kind of where we're at, cobbling money together that make it available, I think could be very useful. So this could be a resource that communities go to help get data analyzed.
Hi, everybody. It's Mary. So I do have a comment that's a little bit off. I see that Amanda's still on, and Shelly and Stephanie and Miss Peggy. And one thing that even coming out of the segment with the youth that I wanted to also say, it's these individuals, I've had the opportunity of working with them, and they're very passionate about what they do. And they really do listen to their youth to see what is going on and how they can help and step in. So I just wanted to say something about that because I have met them in person and had in-depth conversations. So thank you, Miss Peggy. Thank you, Miss Amanda, Miss Shelley, Miss Stephanie, for everything that you guys do for the youth who are currently in the system and while they're out. Because I know there's oftentimes I've spoken with you, Miss Peggy, about the things that you do for the family as a whole and looking at the family instead of just the youth, but looking at how your words and your actions and everything impacts them and always having a positive thing for them and continuing to fight for them through legislative and the different boards that you sit on and having that voice for the rural youth. So I just wanted to give that shout out to them.
And Brock, this is for you. I'm wondering how KDOC sees this kind of work as continuing on down the line. If you could talk a little bit about that.
So I can't speak at the moment with too much authority because that is a discussion that's going on right now with CAG with our Title II funding. Now, the Title II funding is a small piece of the funding available to communities. That's what I work with are those are the federal dollars that come from the Department of Justice to the OJJDP to us. What I mentioned earlier was, there are state funds available through the Juvenile Correction Advisory Boards, and there's some reinvestment funds from the So for those of you that are familiar with Senate bills, we had a juvenile justice reform that went through. We're saving money by not locking kids up, and that money's been put in it's called a reinvestment fund. So some of those are available to local communities too. My subject matter expertise is on the federal grants, but those juvenile corrections advisory boards will, be informed about the availability of state funds. So, sorry, that's not a clear-cut picture, but we don't know, with our federal funds, quite what we're looking at yet. This funding is up in October, and hopefully within a month we'll have a good idea of where the next round of fundings are going on a federal level. But again, that's a pretty small pot compared to what's available through the state.
Thanks, Brock. And I think we all realize that a lot of times with the legislature, nothing is really clear cut. So it takes a while. So Anne, could you talk or speak to how you see your legislative climate and, related to all this and going forward from now?
Yeah, I think actually legislators have been very, very, very supportive of the arrangement in Nebraska over the last decade. They've probably been our biggest fan group, to be honest. And the reason is just a very practical reason is by marrying this pot of money so in Nebraska, the community-based aid fund it's a funding mechanism that goes out to each of our counties. And then those counties decide through their teams who, what kind of programs they're going to run for youth. And in the past, those kind of went out without any, I'll say, accountability. I mean, there was probably local accountability, but we really didn't know how well they were used and did they change, the trajectory for youth in that community. So when we began this relationship with the funding entity, which is the Crime Commission in Nebraska, and the legislature, senators have been super in favor of this because it allows for accountability. It's actually very affordable. And we can, at the end of the day, our goal is to say which programs work better at keeping youth out of the system. This is really, really critical in Nebraska right now because our maybe in Kansas it's the same, but our adult systems are quite full. And so we have to figure out something at this juvenile level. So overall, senators, whenever there's been a bump in the road, there's been a senator by our side saying, hey, we need this relationship and we need researchers to help us know what works. So it's been a really great relationship with the legislature.
Great.
Yeah.
Brock mentioned, I think it was Brock who said, volunteer for your JCABs, get involved. And whoever said that, it was a great suggestion. Peggy, I'm wondering if you would explain to people just a little bit about the JCABs, how they work, and if someone were interested in becoming involved, what would be the first step?
Well, in our JCAB, ours is actually a governing body as opposed to an advisory board. We cover the 17 counties, so 3 judicial districts. And we have a host county, which is Ellis County, which for us is just our fiscal agent. And so the JCAB, we have an interlocal agreement with all 17 counties, and we have one person, a minimum of one person per county appointed to the Corrections Advisory Board. And then there's also statutorily requirements for who has to be on the JCAB. And so currently we have about 24, 25 members on the advisory board, and we meet quarterly. When we have openings, what we do is we actually send a notice to the county commissioners, because that's who appoints to the Corrections Advisory Board, unless it's a statutorily requirement person. So for instance, the district judge in each county or each judicial district has an appointee, so that the district judge would appoint that person. We have a school representative, and so we send out something to the schools having them appoint a person. We have a sheriff that has to be appointed, so we send out a vote to the 17 counties of sheriffs, and then they appoint a person. Typically what we do is we know who's interested already, and so we'll put, for instance, the sheriff's name that's on our board and say he's willing to serve. you can vote for him or you can put another name on there. So that's really how we go about our advisory board. And so I guess it would be the county commissions that would know when we have the openings.
Something too. I didn't know that it was a legislative appointment like that. Let's see. Is Katrina here? I haven't.
No.
Okay. Shelley, does yours work about the same way?
I don't see Shelley.
Maybe she's not here either right now. Yeah. So anyway, that's the general idea. If you're interested, just start asking around and see what the process is in your area. And I know Kelly also serves on the regular not juvenile, but regular corrections advisory board, right, Kelly?
Yes, I do. And it's a similar type of appointment. It has to go through, it's legislated, how many seats are available to citizens. There's a sheriff's representative, very similar process, different representatives from different community providers, and then we have several citizen appointments, and I'm a citizen appointment. So that goes through the Board of County Commissioners, and basically people apply to sit on the board, and then the Department of Corrections makes a decision about who they want to recommend, and then that appointment is made either through the Board of County Commissioners or the City Council.
Good. So the county and city governments are involved in this, and I know that the county commissioners are instrumental in a lot of the programs that Katrina does in the 25th Judicial District. So a lot of their funding is sort of pooled with both state and local funding in that way. So talk to your county commissioners as well if you're interested in getting involved.
I can say for our area, if someone's interested in getting involved, they can contact me too.
Oh, great. Good. That cuts out the middle guy. That's
Thank
what
you all. I'm sorry, Sue. I was going to thank everybody for their comments and the discussion and their participation in this. Obviously, we all had to regroup in terms of changing the delivery system, but you all hung in there with us. It's been a great experience for me, especially to get back to my roots, central and western Kansas. So with no further ado, I'm going to say thank you and goodbye for now.
We will be in touch, everybody. Stay tuned.